The sky above Mumbai tore open like someone had ripped a hole in reality itself. The tear was not violent or loud. It was silent and wrong, a darkness that did not belong in the afternoon sky. People on the streets below stopped walking. They looked up with their phones already recording. Within seconds, the live streams began. The ship that emerged was massive. It was larger than any aircraft carrier, larger than the tallest buildings in the city. Its surface was black and smooth like polished stone, with lines of purple light running across its hull in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The ship did not make any sound as it positioned itself above the city center. It simply hung there, blocking out the sun and casting a shadow over millions of people. Then the sky over São Paulo tore open. Then Lagos, then Jakarta, then Cairo. Within 3 minutes, 20 of Earth's largest cities had alien vessels hovering above them like predators watching their prey. The news networks went crazy trying to cover everything at once. Every channel showed split screens of different cities, different ships, different crowds of people staring upward in confusion and growing fear. The United Nations building in New York erupted into chaos. Diplomats ran through hallways. Military advisors shouted into phones. The Secretary General tried to organize an emergency session, while his staff attempted to establish communication with the vessels. They broadcast messages in every human language. They sent mathematical sequences. They transmitted images of peaceful intent. The ships remained silent. Then every screen on Earth went dark. Every television, every computer monitor, every smartphone, every digital billboard in every country on the planet showed the same thing, a countdown timer. The numbers glowed the same purple as the lights on the alien ships. 72 hours, 71 hours and 59 minutes, 71 hours and 58 minutes. The world held its breath for exactly 12 minutes. Then the countdown jumped forward. It now read 47 minutes. People in Mumbai saw their ship begin to glow. The purple lines across its surface brightened until they were almost white. The air around the vessel shimmered with heat. Someone on the ground screamed. Others started to run, but there was nowhere to go. The streets were too crowded. The buildings offered no protection from what was above. The first beam struck the eastern district. It was not an explosion. It was erasure. A column of light touched the ground, and everything within a half-mile radius simply ceased to exist. Buildings, roads, vehicles, people, all converted to superheated plasma in less than a second. The shockwave flattened everything for another mile beyond that. The sound came after. A thunder so loud it shattered windows across the entire city. The same thing happened in São Paulo, in Lagos, in Jakarta, in Cairo, in Tokyo, in Mexico City, in Shanghai, in Karachi, in Istanbul, in Moscow, in New York, in Los Angeles, in London, in Paris, in Delhi, in Bangkok, in Manila, in Bogota, in Kinshasa, in Dhaka. 20 cities, simultaneous strikes. The screens that had shown the countdown now showed split feeds of the destruction. The aliens wanted everyone to watch. They wanted Earth to see what was happening in real time. The cameras were their own, mounted on their ships, providing perfect high-definition views of the carnage below. The second strikes came 30 seconds later. Then the third. The ships moved slowly across each city, their beams cutting through urban landscapes like someone drawing lines on a map. They were methodical and precise. They avoided hitting power plants and major infrastructure. They focused on residential areas, business districts, places where people gathered. The message was clear. They were killing people, not destroying cities. Admiral Chen Wei of the Chinese Navy watched from a bunker deep beneath Beijing. His hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. The screens in front of him showed carnage beyond imagination. Shanghai was burning. His daughter lived in Shanghai. He had tried calling her when the ships appeared. The call had not gone through. General Sarah Mitchell stood in the Pentagon Command Center watching Washington, D.C. on the monitors. The alien ship there had not struck yet, but it would. The pattern was clear. Major cities first, then secondary targets. She had already given orders to evacuate what they could, but the roads were jammed. People were trampling each other trying to flee. She felt utterly helpless. In Geneva, Dr. Marcus Webb stared at his computer screen in the CERN facility. The countdown timer now read 28 minutes. His team of physicists surrounded him, all watching the same feeds, all silent with horror. Someone was crying quietly in the corner. Marcus forced himself to think, to analyze, to do anything other than just watch people die. He pulled up sensor data from the ships. There had to be something. Some weakness. Some pattern they could exploit. The alien broadcast changed. A face appeared on every screen. It was not human, but it was close enough to be disturbing. The skin was gray and smooth. The eyes too large and completely black, the mouth too wide. When it spoke, the voice came through as a distorted version of human speech, like someone had learned English by listening to recordings played backward. "We are the Zathran," the face said. "You are primitive. You are weak. You are examples." The face disappeared. The countdown appeared again. 19 minutes, the strikes continued. The aliens were pacing themselves now, drawing it out. In Mumbai, rescue workers tried to reach survivors in the outer blast zones. The alien ship adjusted its aim and vaporized the rescue teams. In Mexico City, fighter jets scrambled from nearby bases. They fired missiles at the vessel above them. The missiles exploded against an invisible barrier 100 meters from the ship's hull. The ship's response was immediate. It fired a beam at the airbase the jets had launched from. 2,000 people died in that single strike. 14 minutes left. The Pope broadcast from Vatican City, calling for prayer and unity. The transmission lasted 30 seconds before the screens were hijacked again. The alien face returned. "No gods will save you. No faith protects you. Watch and learn what power means." The Vatican was not on the target list, but the ship hovering over Rome adjusted its position slightly. It fired a single narrow beam that struck St. Peter's Basilica dead center. The ancient building collapsed in on itself. The Pope's transmission ended. 10 minutes left. The President of the United States sat in a bunker beneath the White House. Her military advisors surrounded her, all talking at once. Nuclear options, evacuation protocols, continuity of government procedures. She listened to none of it. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screens showing Los Angeles burning. 7 million people lived in that city. The death toll was already over 1 million and still climbing. "We have to respond," the chairman of the Joint Chiefs said. "We cannot just sit here and watch this happen." "Respond with what?" the president asked, her voice hollow. "Our missiles bounce off their shields. Our jets can't get close. Every time we fight back, they kill more people." 5 minutes left. In Mumbai, the fires had spread beyond the strike zones. The city's emergency services were overwhelmed. Hospitals overflowed with burned and broken bodies. Doctors worked without supplies, without power, without hope. In the streets, people huddled in whatever shelter they could find, watching their phones show the countdown that now read 3 minutes. The alien broadcast changed one final time. The face appeared again, but now it was joined by others. An entire command deck was visible, with dozens of the gray-skinned beings working at stations that pulsed with purple light. "This demonstration concludes soon," the voice said. 20 million of you have been harvested. This is not war. This is instruction. 200 civilizations across this sector watch your world today. They see what resistance brings. They learn what defiance costs. The alien leaned closer to the camera, its too wide mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "You have 7 of your planetary rotations to surrender completely. Your governments will dissolve. Your militaries will disarm. Your people will submit to Zathran authority. If you comply, the harvest ends. If you resist, we will continue. We have patience. We have time. We have power beyond your understanding. 2 minutes left. We will return for your answer in 7 days. Use this time to accept reality. You are not special. You are not strong. You are livestock, and we are your masters now. The galaxy watches. Show them wisdom or show them more death. The choice is yours." The countdown reached 0. The alien ship stopped firing. The beams shut off. The vessels hung in the sky for another 30 seconds as if admiring their work. Then the air around them shimmered. They vanished, leaving behind only the holes they had torn in reality, which sealed themselves moments later. The silence that followed was worse than the destruction. 20 cities burned. 20 million people were dead or dying. Millions more were injured. The infrastructure in each city was damaged, but not destroyed. The aliens had been careful about that. They wanted survivors. They wanted witnesses. They wanted fear. The screens returned to normal function. News anchors appeared, most of them in tears, trying to report on something beyond comprehension. The images coming from the affected cities were apocalyptic. Entire neighborhoods were just gone, replaced by smoking craters. Bodies lined the streets in areas just outside the blast zones. Survivors wandered through the ruins, calling for loved ones, searching for anyone who might still be alive. In the Geneva bunker, Dr. Webb sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. His team was talking, analyzing the sensor data they had collected, but he was not listening. He was thinking about what the alien had said. 200 civilizations watching. This was not about Earth. This was about sending a message to the entire sector of the galaxy. Humanity was an example, a demonstration, a lesson in what happened to species who might think about resisting Zathran rule. General Mitchell in the Pentagon was already on secure channels with other military leaders. Her face was hard as stone, but her eyes burned with something beyond anger. 7 days, she said quietly to the other commanders on the screen. They just gave us 7 days to prepare. They think we will surrender. What choice do we have? The Russian general asked. They killed 20 million in less than an hour. If we resist, they will kill everyone. If we surrender, we are slaves forever, Admiral Chen said from Beijing. His voice was steady despite the fact that his entire family was gone. My daughter died today. 20 million people died today. The question is not whether we fight. The question is how we kill them all. The line went silent. Then, one by one, the other commanders nodded. The president appeared on the secure channel. Her face was pale, but her voice was firm. Initiate Protocol Prometheus. Contact everyone. Scientists, engineers, military contractors, everyone. We have 7 days to turn this planet into a weapon. If they want to make an example of us, then we will make an example of them. We will show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. The first day after the massacre, the world did not know whether to mourn or prepare. People gathered in the streets of unaffected cities, holding candles and crying for the dead. But behind closed doors in bunkers and military facilities across the globe, a different kind of gathering was taking place. The United Earth Command formed in a bunker complex beneath Geneva within 6 hours of the alien departure. It was not voted on or debated. It simply happened because there was no time for anything else. Every nation sent their best military minds. Every major power contributed their classified research. The old rivalries and conflicts were set aside because everyone understood the simple truth. Either humanity united or humanity died. General Sarah Mitchell arrived from the Pentagon on a military transport that landed in Zurich. She had not slept since the attack. Her eyes were red from exhaustion and grief, but her mind was sharp. The bunker facility was deeper than she expected, carved out of solid rock with enough space to house thousands of people. The main command center was already filled with screens showing data streams from around the world. Admiral Chen Wei was already there, standing in front of a tactical display showing the last known positions of the alien ships. He looked like he had aged 10 years in one day. When Sarah approached, he did not turn around. They made a mistake, Chen said quietly. What mistake? Sarah asked. They left us alive. They left us organized. They gave us 7 days. Chen finally looked at her. If they wanted to conquer us, they should have struck everywhere at once. Killed our leaders. Destroyed our military. Instead, they killed civilians and gave us time to think. Sarah nodded slowly. They are arrogant. They think we will surrender. Good, Chen said. Let them think that. Dr. Marcus Webb arrived later that day with a team of physicists from CERN. He looked terrible, his hair disheveled and his clothes rumpled, but his eyes were bright with determination. He had spent the entire night analyzing sensor data from the alien ships. What he found gave Earth its first real hope. The command center fell silent when Marcus began his presentation. Every general, every admiral, every intelligence officer leaned forward to listen. The Zathran shields are not perfect, Marcus said, pulling up holographic displays of the energy signatures. They are powerful, yes, but they operate on a frequency we can disrupt. During the attack, their shields were at approximately 40% capacity. They were conserving energy because they did not see us as a threat. Can we break through? A Chinese general asked. With conventional weapons? No, Marcus said. But we have something better. Quantum disruption technology. We have been researching it for 15 years at CERN and other facilities. We were developing it for fusion reactors, but the same principle can be weaponized. If we hit their shields with a synchronized quantum pulse from multiple directions, we can create a cascade failure. Their shields will collapse for approximately 0.3 seconds. 0.3 seconds, Sarah repeated. That is all we get? Marcus nodded. But 0.3 seconds is enough. If we coordinate properly, if we strike with everything we have in that window, we can destroy them. The room erupted into conversation. Analysts began calculating what weapons could be deployed in that time frame. Targeting specialists started working on firing solutions. For the first time since the attack, there was something other than despair in the air. There was a plan, but they needed more information. They needed to know everything about the Zathran, their technology, their tactics, their culture. Fortunately, humanity had been paranoid about hostile first contact for decades. Commander Yuki Tanaka was summoned from a classified facility in Japan. She was naval strategy specialist, but her real expertise was in something the public did not know existed. The SETI Defense Initiative was a program started in the 1960s when governments first realized that contact with aliens might not be friendly. Every major power had contributed to it secretly. They had built weapons. They had created contingency plans. They had prepared for this exact scenario. Yuki arrived on the second day and immediately took control of the intelligence analysis. She was small and soft-spoken, but everyone in the command center quickly learned to listen when she talked. She had spent 20 years studying potential alien threats and developing responses. The Zathran fit a profile she had created years ago, a technologically advanced conquering species that relied on fear and overwhelming force. They are bullies, Yuki said during a briefing. They are used to weaker species surrendering immediately. Their tactics show no creativity, no adaptation. They have one strategy: show up, demonstrate power, demand submission. It works most of the time, so they never developed anything else. How do we use that against them? Admiral Chen asked. We give them what they expect, Yuki said. We make them think we are surrendering. We let them get comfortable, then we hit them with everything we have when they are not ready. The plan that emerged over the next 3 days was complex, but elegant. Earth would pretend to surrender. The Secretary General would broadcast a message of submission. Every nation would stand down their militaries visibly. The Zathran would return expecting an easy occupation. Instead, they would fly into a trap, but the trap required weapons that did not exist yet. The quantum disruption satellites needed to be built and launched. The firing solutions needed to be calculated. The timing needed to be perfect. And all of it needed to happen in less than 7 days while making it look like Earth was preparing to surrender. The world's industrial capacity was redirected overnight. Factories that made cars started making missile components. Tech companies devoted their resources to building AI targeting systems. Space agencies launched rockets every few hours, each one carrying satellites that were officially for communication and monitoring, but were actually quantum disruption platforms. The public was told that these preparations were for compliance with the coming occupation. Most people believed it. They had seen what the Zathran could do. Surrender seemed like the only option. But some people knew the truth. The scientists working around the clock in hidden facilities, the soldiers training for a suicide mission, the engineers building weapons in secret underground factories. On the third day, intelligence analysts made a breakthrough. They had been monitoring the alien transmissions from the attack, and buried in the signal data, they found something: coordinates. The Zathran had been broadcasting their victory to other civilizations, and the transmission included navigational data. Now humanity knew where the Zathran homeworld was. It was 12 light-years away, in a system humanity had cataloged but never visited. We can find them, Marcus said, staring at the star charts. After we destroy their fleet here, we can track them back to their home. One problem at a time, Sarah said. First we survive, then we make them pay. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. The remaining alien wreckage from the attack, pieces of destroyed missiles and damaged shield generators, began to yield secrets. Engineers reverse-engineered the Zathran technology faster than anyone thought possible. The shield generators operated on principles humanity had theorized but never achieved. The fold space drives used quantum tunneling in ways that broke several laws of physics as Earth understood them. But understanding the technology meant learning how to counter it. By the end of the 4th day, human scientists had developed a fold space disruptor. It was crude and had limited range, but it would prevent the Zathran from escaping once the attack began. Every ship would be trapped in Earth's solar system until humanity destroyed them all. The 5th day brought doubt. Intelligence reports suggested the Zathran might be monitoring Earth's preparations more closely than expected. There were strange energy signatures detected in orbit, possibly cloaked observation probes. If the aliens suspected the trap, they might arrive ready for battle instead of occupation. Yuki spent the entire day adjusting the plan. They would add layers of deception. They would make some preparations obvious to draw attention away from the real weapons. They would stage protests and resistance in some cities to make the surrender look reluctant, but inevitable. Every detail mattered. The sixth day was when people started to truly understand what was being asked of them. The military volunteers who would crew the close-range weapons knew they probably would not survive the counterattack. The satellite operators who would trigger the quantum pulse knew they would be the first targets. The pilots who would fly attack runs knew the odds were against them. But for every volunteer, there were 100 more waiting to take their place. 20 million people were dead. Millions more wanted revenge. Sarah Mitchell walked through one of the training facilities that day and watched young men and women preparing for battle. Some were barely 20 years old. They checked their equipment with steady hands and calm faces. She wanted to tell them they did not have to do this, that there had to be another way, but she knew there was not. This was the price of survival. This was the cost of freedom. "General," one of the pilots said, approaching her. She was maybe 25 with her hair tied back and determination in her eyes. "My sister died in Lagos. I want you to know that I am not scared. I am ready." Sarah wanted to say something meaningful, something that would honor this young woman's courage, but words failed her. She simply nodded and saluted. The pilot saluted back and returned to her squadron. Admiral Chen spent the sixth day finalizing the targeting priorities. The Zathran command ship would be the primary target. Destroy the leadership first, then systematically eliminate every vessel in the fleet. The AI systems would track every ship, every shuttle, every escape pod. Nothing would leave the solar system alive. "It is genocide," one of the analysts said quietly. "We are planning to kill them all." Chen looked at the young man for a long moment. "They killed 20 million of us as a demonstration. They promised to kill everyone if we resist. They made themselves teachers and we are their students. Today we learned their lesson. Tomorrow we teach them ours." On the seventh day, Earth held its breath. The preparations were complete. The weapons were in position. The troops were ready. All that remained was waiting for the Zathran to return. The Secretary General recorded her surrender speech. It would be broadcast as soon as the alien fleet arrived. Every word was carefully chosen to sound defeated and compliant, while secretly being a signal to military forces that the trap was set. In bunkers and command centers around the world, commanders watched the clocks count down. In orbit, satellites positioned themselves for the quantum pulse. On the ground, missile silos prepared to launch. Submarine crews flooded their tubes and awaited orders. Fighter pilots sat in their cockpits ready to scramble. The entire planet was a coiled spring waiting to release. Marcus Webb sat in the Geneva bunker staring at his equations one last time. He had checked everything 1,000 times, but he checked again anyway. The quantum disruption would work. It had to work. If it failed, if the shields did not collapse, then humanity would die fighting, but it would still die. Yuki Tanaka reviewed the tactical plans until she could recite them from memory. Every contingency was accounted for. Every possibility was planned for. But she knew that no plan survived contact with the enemy. Once the battle started, chaos would take over. They would have to adapt and improvise. She just hoped they would be fast enough. Sarah Mitchell stood in the main command center surrounded by screens showing military assets around the globe. Thousands of weapons, millions of personnel, all waiting for her signal. The weight of it was crushing. If she gave the order and they failed, she would be responsible for the extinction of humanity. But if she did nothing, extinction was guaranteed anyway. The clock showed 6 hours until the deadline. Then 5 hours, then 4. Admiral Chen looked at the memorial display that had been set up in one corner of the command center. 20 million names scrolled across the screen, each one representing a life ended, a family destroyed, a future erased. His daughter's name was there. Thousands of children's names were there. "We do this for them," he said to no one in particular. "We make sure their deaths meant something." 3 hours until the deadline. The tension in the command center was unbearable. People spoke in whispers. Every sound seemed too loud. 2 hours. The reconnaissance satellites detected the first spatial distortions. The Zathran were coming back early. 1 hour. The tiers in space began opening above major cities around the world. Not 20 cities this time, hundreds. The Zathran were bringing their entire fleet for the occupation. 30 minutes. The first ships began emerging. They were the same design as before, massive and black with purple lights. But there were so many more of them. Intelligence counts showed over 800 vessels entering Earth's atmosphere. 15 minutes. The Secretary General began her surrender broadcast. Her voice was steady as she announced that Earth submitted to Zathran authority. The alien ships moved into lower orbit, positioning themselves above every major city and military installation. 5 minutes. The Zathran Admiral broadcast his acceptance of the surrender. He spoke of the wisdom of submission and the mercy of his species. He promised that humanity would serve well under Zathran guidance. His voice was smug and satisfied. The command center fell silent. Everyone watched Sarah Mitchell. She stood at the central console with her hand hovering over the authorization panel. Every eye was on her. She thought about the 20 million dead. She thought about the young pilot who had lost her sister. She thought about her own family, safe now but slaves if this failed. She thought about what humanity would become under alien rule. Her hand came down on the panel. All units, she said calmly, execute Operation Righteous Fury. The quantum pulse fired from 40 satellites simultaneously. The quantum pulse was invisible to the naked eye, but every sensor in the solar system registered it. 40 satellites released their energy in perfect synchronization, creating a wave of disruption that washed over the Zathran fleet like an ocean of razors. The alien shields configured for kinetic and energy weapons had no defense against quantum interference. For exactly 0.3 seconds, 800 warships hung in Earth's sky completely vulnerable. 0.3 seconds was an eternity in modern warfare. The first missiles, launched from submarines hidden in the Arctic Ocean, reached their targets in 0.18 seconds. 60 ICBMs, each carrying multiple warheads, streaked upward on columns of fire. They had been waiting for this moment. Their trajectories calculated months ago and updated continuously as the Zathran fleet positioned itself. The Zathran admiral barely had time to register what was happening. One moment he was broadcasting his victory to the 200 civilizations watching. The next moment alarms were screaming throughout his command ship. His shield officer shouted something about quantum interference and system failure, but the words were cut off as the first nuclear warhead detonated 300 meters from the hull. The explosion was beautiful and terrible. The command ship's armor held for almost 2 full seconds before it failed. Then the ship came apart like a flower blooming in reverse, its structure fragmenting into thousands of pieces that tumbled through the atmosphere trailing fire. Admiral Chen watched from Geneva as the command ship died. His face showed no expression, but his hands were steady on the console as he authorized the next wave. All ground batteries fire at will. Railgun platforms scattered across 6 continents began firing. These were not the experimental weapons the aliens had faced during the first attack. These were production models, refined and perfected over the past 7 days, capable of accelerating tungsten rods to relativistic speeds. The rods were not large, only a meter long and 10 centimeters in diameter. But at 0.03 the speed of light, they did not need to be large. The Zathran cruiser above London simply ceased to exist when 3 rods passed through it. The kinetic energy flash heated the air around the impact points to plasma temperatures. The shockwave shattered windows across the entire city, but the alien ship fell from the sky in pieces. 0.3 seconds had elapsed. The shields began to recover, but it did not matter. Humanity had learned the lesson of momentum. Once started, violence should be overwhelming and complete. The initial strikes had destroyed nearly 200 alien vessels. The remaining ships tried to scatter, to regroup, to return fire. They were met with something they had not expected: the sky filled with drones. For decades, military strategists had debated the future of warfare. Some said it would be fought with autonomous systems. Others argued that humans would always be necessary. The Zathran attack had settled the debate forever. Humanity had spent 7 days converting every available resource into AI-controlled weapons. The result was a swarm of 50,000 drones, each one barely larger than a car, each one equipped with armor-piercing explosives and rudimentary AI that had one single instruction: find alien ships and destroy them. The drones had no shields. They had no sophisticated sensors. They were cheap, fast, and expendable. Most importantly, there were so many of them that the Zathran could not possibly stop them all. For every drone destroyed, 20 more took its place. They crashed into alien hulls like angry hornets, their explosives shaped to punch through armor and detonate inside the ships. A Zathran destroyer above Mumbai managed to bring its weapons online and started firing into the drone swarm. It destroyed hundreds of them. Then a railgun round from India's defense platform hit it amidships and it broke in half. The two pieces fell into the Arabian Sea, creating tsunamis that would devastate the coastline. But the ship was dead. Sarah Mitchell watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Every alien ship was marked in red. Every red dot that winked out was a victory. The count was dropping fast. 700 ships, 600, 500. The Zathran were trying to fight back, but they had positioned themselves for occupation, not battle. They were spread too thin, with no formation and no support structure. They have never fought a real war, Yuki Tanaka said quietly, standing next to Sarah. They have only ever fought executions. Commander Tanaka was right. The Zathran had grown comfortable with easy victories. They had never faced an enemy that hit back, never encountered resistance that could hurt them. Their tactics were rigid and predictable. When the command ship died, the fleet lost all coordination. Individual captains tried to retreat to high orbit or flee the system entirely. But there was no unified response. That was when humanity's second trap activated. The Fold Space disruptors came online around the solar system's edge. They were crude devices, assembled in 7 days from reverse-engineered alien technology and human ingenuity. They created a field of quantum interference that prevented Fold Space jumps. The range was limited, barely extending past Jupiter's orbit, but it was enough. The Zathran fleet was trapped in a cage with predators they had awakened. 34 ships managed to break free from Earth's gravity well and accelerate toward the outer system. They were the fastest vessels in the fleet, built for reconnaissance and rapid deployment. Their captains must have realized immediately that this was not a battle they could win. They ran. Admiral Chen had anticipated this. He had spent 2 days planning for it. Launch the Hunters, he ordered. The Hunters were humanity's first true warships built in orbit during the 7 days of preparation. They were not elegant or sophisticated. They were fusion drives attached to weapons platforms designed for one purpose: pursuit. 12 hunter-killer ships launched from hidden positions behind the moon and accelerated after the fleeing Zathran vessels. The main battle lasted 18 minutes from first shot to last. By the end, Earth's orbit was a debris field of dead alien ships. Pieces of hull and broken technology rained down on the planet below, burning up in the atmosphere like shooting stars. The orbital space around Earth would be contaminated with wreckage for decades, making space travel dangerous and complicated. But the alien fleet was gone. Almost gone. Marcus Webb's team tracked the 34 fleeing ships with obsessive precision. Every vessel was catalogued. Every trajectory was calculated. The Fold Space disruptors would keep them trapped in the solar system for at least 3 hours before they could recharge and adjust their drives to compensate. 3 hours was more than enough time. The hunter-killer ships were crewed by volunteers who had trained for exactly this mission. They knew the aliens would try to run. They knew pursuit would take them far from Earth, possibly beyond help if anything went wrong. They went anyway. Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez commanded the lead hunter, a ship christened Mumbai's Vengeance in honor of the first city hit. His crew of 23 were all veterans, people who had lost someone in the attack. His weapons officer had lost his parents in Jakarta. His navigator had lost her husband in Cairo. His engineer had lost his entire family in Lagos. Contact bearing 270, distance 8 light minutes and closing, the sensor operator announced. Zathran destroyer class accelerating at 3 gravities. Match and exceed, Rodriguez ordered. 4 gravities. I want to catch them before they reach the disruption boundary. The crew braced themselves as the fusion drive pushed them harder. 4 gravities was manageable for short periods, but it was painful and exhausting. Rodriguez watched the distance close on his display. 7 light minutes, 6, 5. The Zathran ship detected them and tried to accelerate further, but human engineering had one advantage: desperation. The hunter ships had been built with no concern for comfort or safety margins. They were designed to catch fleeing enemies no matter the cost. At 5 light minutes, Rodriguez gave the order to fire. The missile that launched from Mumbai's Vengeance was not sophisticated. It was a fusion warhead attached to a seeker head that locked onto the Zathran ship's drive signature. The alien vessel tried to evade, turning sharply and burning hard, but the missile compensated. When it detonated, the explosion was bright enough to be seen from Earth as a brief new star in the sky. "Target destroyed," the weapons officer reported. Tracking next contact. This scene repeated across the solar system. 12 hunter ships pursuing 34 alien vessels. The humans had the advantage of knowing the terrain and having ships built specifically for this mission. The aliens had the advantage of more advanced base technology, but that technology was not enough. One by one, the fleeing Zathran ships died. Some tried to hide in the asteroid belt. Hunters found them using gravitic sensors and destroyed them. Some tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas in broken English. The hunters ignored them and fired. Some tried to fight, turning to face their pursuers with weapons blazing. They died slightly more slowly, but they still died. By the 6th hour after the initial attack, only 3 Zathran ships remained. They had made it further than any others, nearly to the fold space disruption boundary. If they could break through, they might escape. Rodriguez's ship was the closest pursuer, but his fusion drive was redlining. His engineer reported stress fractures in the drive housing and fluctuating containment fields. "How long can we maintain this acceleration?" Rodriguez asked. "Maybe another hour," the engineer said. "Maybe less. If the containment fails, we all die." Rodriguez looked at his crew. They looked back at him with hard eyes and set jaws. The silent vote was unanimous. "All power to engines," he ordered. "If we die making sure they do not escape." The distance closed. 4 light minutes, 3. The Zathran ships detected them and began firing. Energy beams lanced through space, missing by kilometers at first, but getting closer with each shot. Rodriguez's ship took a glancing hit that vaporized one of the sensor arrays and killed 2 crew members instantly. "Return fire all weapons," Rodriguez ordered. Mumbai's Vengeance had 6 missiles left, all of them launched in a spread pattern seeking targets. The Zathran ships tried to evade, but they were exhausted too. Their drives pushed beyond design limits by hours of desperate flight. 2 ships died. The 3rd survived and kept running. Rodriguez's ship was dying. The containment field was failing. The hull was cracking from stress. They had minutes at most. "1 missile left," the weapons officer said. "Distance to target 2.3 light minutes. It is going to be close." "Fire," Rodriguez ordered. The last missile launched. The crew watched its progress on the rapidly failing sensors. The Zathran ship fired back, hitting Mumbai's Vengeance directly. The hunter ship came apart, its fusion bottle rupturing and consuming everything in a brief sun. But the missile kept going, and 43 seconds later it found its target. The last fleeing Zathran ship died at the edge of the solar system, destroyed by a weapon fired from a ship that no longer existed, crewed by people who had given everything to ensure nothing escaped. Back in Geneva, the command center fell silent as the last red dot on the tactical display winked out. 800 Zathran vessels had entered Earth's atmosphere. 800 Zathran vessels were destroyed. The hunters had paid a terrible price, 3 ships lost, 68 people dead, but the mission was complete. "All hostiles eliminated," the tactical officer reported quietly. Admiral Chen bowed his head. Sarah Mitchell closed her eyes. Around the room, hardened military officers allowed themselves a moment of grief for the people who had died making this victory possible. Then, because there was no time to mourn properly, they pushed it aside and returned to work. Marcus Webb's team was already analyzing the wreckage in orbit. Dozens of satellites and drones were collecting samples, scanning debris fields, looking for anything useful. What they found exceeded every expectation. The Zathran data cores had survived. They were designed to withstand catastrophic ship destruction, so that information could be recovered. Humanity now had access to complete navigational databases, fleet logs, tactical reports, and most importantly, the coordinates for every Zathran military installation in the local sector, including their homeworld. Sarah Mitchell stared at the star chart that appeared on the main display. The Zathran home system was marked in red, 12 light years away. 4 planets orbiting a yellow star. Population estimates showed 7 billion Zathran citizens, the heart of their empire. "We have their location," Marcus said unnecessarily. Everyone in the room could see it. "What do we do with this information?" Yuki asked. She already knew the answer, but someone had to ask the question. The room fell silent. The war had lasted less than a day. Earth had won decisively. The immediate threat was over. Humanity could rebuild, mourn its dead, and return to life. No one would blame them for choosing peace. Admiral Chen spoke first. His voice was quiet but carried absolute certainty. We finish it. We make sure they can never threaten anyone again. We make sure every species in the galaxy knows what happens when you murder 20 million humans for a demonstration. We show them that Earth remembers, Sarah Mitchell added. We show them that humanity does not forgive genocide. We show them that there are consequences. The vote was not even close. 7 commanders in favor, 2 abstaining but not opposing, 0 against. Earth would build a fleet. Earth would travel to the Zathran homeworld, and Earth would teach the galaxy a lesson that would echo across the stars for millennia. The age of human mercy was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. The crew braced themselves as the fusion drive pushed them harder. 4 gravities was manageable for short periods, but it was painful and exhausting. Rodriguez watched the distance close on his display. 7 light minutes, 6, 5. The Zathran ship detected them and tried to accelerate further, but human engineering had one advantage: desperation. The Hunter ships had been built with no concern for comfort or safety margins. They were designed to catch fleeing enemies no matter the cost. At 5 light minutes, Rodriguez gave the order to fire. The missile that launched from Mumbai's Vengeance was not sophisticated. It was a fusion warhead attached to a seeker head that locked onto the Zathran ship's drive signature. The alien vessel tried to evade, turning sharply and burning hard, but the missile compensated. When it detonated, the explosion was bright enough to be seen from Earth as a brief new star in the sky. Target destroyed, the weapons officer reported. Tracking next contact. This scene repeated across the solar system. 12 Hunter ships pursuing 34 alien vessels. The humans had the advantage of knowing the terrain and having ships built specifically for this mission. The aliens had the advantage of more advanced base technology, but that technology was not enough. One by one, the fleeing Zathran ships died. Some tried to hide in the asteroid belt. Hunters found them using gravitic sensors and destroyed them. Some tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas in broken English. The Hunters ignored them and fired. Some tried to fight, turning to face their pursuers with weapons blazing. They died slightly more slowly, but they still died. By the 6th hour after the initial attack, only 3 Zathran ships remained. They had made it further than any others, nearly to the fold space disruption boundary. If they could break through, they might escape. Rodriguez's ship was the closest pursuer, but his fusion drive was redlining. His engineer reported stress fractures in the drive housing and fluctuating containment fields. How long can we maintain this acceleration? Rodriguez asked. Maybe another hour, the engineer said. Maybe less. If the containment fails, we all die. Rodriguez looked at his crew. They looked back at him with hard eyes and set jaws. The silent vote was unanimous. All power to engines, he ordered. If we die making sure they do not escape. The distance closed. 4 light minutes, 3. The Zathran ships detected them and began firing. Energy beams lanced through space, missing by kilometers at first, but getting closer with each shot. Rodriguez's ship took a glancing hit that vaporized one of the sensor arrays and killed 2 crew members instantly. Return fire all weapons, Rodriguez ordered. Mumbai's Vengeance had 6 missiles left, all of them launched in a spread pattern seeking targets. The Zathran ships tried to evade, but they were exhausted too. Their drives pushed beyond design limits by hours of desperate flight. 2 ships died. The 3rd survived and kept running. Rodriguez's ship was dying. The containment field was failing. The hull was cracking from stress. They had minutes at most. 1 missile left, the weapons officer said. Distance to target 2.3 light minutes. It is going to be close. Fire, Rodriguez ordered. The last missile launched. The crew watched its progress on the rapidly failing sensors. The Zathran ship fired back, hitting Mumbai's Vengeance directly. The Hunter ship came apart, its fusion bottle rupturing and consuming everything in a brief sun. But the missile kept going, and 43 seconds later it found its target. The last fleeing Zathran ship died at the edge of the solar system, destroyed by a weapon fired from a ship that no longer existed, crewed by people who had given everything to ensure nothing escaped. Back in Geneva, the command center fell silent as the last red dot on the tactical display winked out. 800 Zathran vessels had entered Earth's atmosphere. 800 Zathran vessels were destroyed. The hunters had paid a terrible price, 3 ships lost, 68 people dead, but the mission was complete. All hostiles eliminated, the tactical officer reported quietly. Admiral Chen bowed his head. Sarah Mitchell closed her eyes. Around the room, hardened military officers allowed themselves a moment of grief for the people who had died making this victory possible. Then, because there was no time to mourn properly, they pushed it aside and returned to work. Marcus Webb's team was already analyzing the wreckage in orbit. Dozens of satellites and drones were collecting samples, scanning debris fields, looking for anything useful. What they found exceeded every expectation. The Zathran data cores had survived. They were designed to withstand catastrophic ship destruction, so that information could be recovered. Humanity now had access to complete navigational databases, fleet logs, tactical reports, and most importantly, the coordinates for every Zathran military installation in the local sector, including their homeworld. Sarah Mitchell stared at the star chart that appeared on the main display. The Zathran home system was marked in red, 12 light-years away. 4 planets orbiting a yellow star. Population estimates showed 7 billion Zathran citizens, the heart of their empire. "We have their location," Marcus said unnecessarily. Everyone in the room could see it. "What do we do with this information?" Yuki asked. She already knew the answer, but someone had to ask the question. The room fell silent. The war had lasted less than a day. Earth had won decisively. The immediate threat was over. Humanity could rebuild, mourn its dead, and return to life. No one would blame them for choosing peace. Admiral Chen spoke first. His voice was quiet but carried absolute certainty. "We finish it. We make sure they can never threaten anyone again. We make sure every species in the galaxy knows what happens when you murder 20 million humans for a demonstration. We show them that Earth remembers," Sarah Mitchell added. "We show them that humanity does not forgive genocide. We show them that there are consequences." The vote was not even close. 7 commanders in favor, 2 abstaining but not opposing, 0 against. Earth would build a fleet. Earth would travel to the Zathran homeworld, and Earth would teach the galaxy a lesson that would echo across the stars for millennia. The age of human mercy was over. The age of human vengeance had begun. The Earth that emerged from the ashes of the Zathran attack was not the same world that had existed before. The old borders and conflicts seemed meaningless now. Nations that had been enemies for generations found themselves working together without hesitation. When you have faced extinction together, petty differences lose their power. The United Earth Command became a permanent government within 3 months. It was not democratic or fair, but it was necessary. Every resource on the planet was directed toward a single purpose: building a fleet capable of traveling 12 light-years and destroying an entire civilization. The public was told this was for defense to ensure the Zathran could never return. That was technically true, but it was not the whole truth. The whole truth was vengeance. Sarah Mitchell stood on the observation deck of the orbital construction facility, watching workers in spacesuits assemble the skeleton of the first real warship. It dwarfed anything humanity had built before. The design combined Zathran fold space technology with human engineering. The result was something neither species could have created alone: a vessel capable of carrying 1,000 crew members across interstellar distances, armed with weapons that could crack planets. They were building 50 of them. "It is beautiful, in a terrible way," Marcus Webb said, joining her at the window. He looked older now, worn down by months of endless work. His team had reverse-engineered more Zathran technology than seemed possible. Fold space drives, quantum shields, energy weapons. All of it was now understood and improved upon by human scientists driven by loss and anger. "What we are building is not beautiful," Sarah said quietly. "It is necessary, but it is not beautiful. These ships exist for one purpose: to kill an entire species." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I wonder if we are doing the right thing. The Zathran who attacked us are already dead. The ones on their homeworld did not pull the trigger. Are they responsible?" Sarah turned to look at him. Her eyes were hard. They built an empire on intimidation and mass murder. They killed species as demonstrations. They were not victims. They were architects of a system where genocide was policy. Yes, Marcus, they are responsible. The construction continued day and night. Factories across Earth worked 3 shifts without pause. Resources were extracted from asteroids and moons. Solar arrays powered forges that ran continuously. The entire planet had become a war machine, and it would not stop until the job was finished. The ships were named after the dead cities: Mumbai's Wrath, Lagos Rising, Shanghai's Vengeance, Tokyo's Fury. Each name was a reminder of why they were being built. Each ship carried a memorial wall listing everyone who had died in that city. The crews would fight surrounded by the names of the dead. Recruiting the crews was easier than expected. 5,000 positions were available. Over 100,000 people volunteered within the first week. Many were military veterans, but many more were civilians who had lost everything in the attack. They wanted to be part of what came next. They wanted to ensure their loved ones were avenged. Commander Yuki Tanaka oversaw the selection process. She looked for people who were competent and stable, but also people who understood what this mission really meant. This was not exploration. This was not peacekeeping. This was execution on a civilizational scale. The people chosen needed to be capable of that. Lieutenant Sarah Chen, no relation to Admiral Chen Wei, was 24 years old when she volunteered. Her entire family had died in Shanghai. She had been studying abroad in Australia when the attack happened. She came home to find her neighborhood was just a crater. Her parents, her younger brother, her grandparents, all gone in an instant. She applied to be a weapons officer and was accepted immediately. Her psychological profile showed concerning levels of trauma and anger, but the evaluators decided those were features, not bugs. This mission required people who would not hesitate when the time came. "Why do you want to be part of this?" Yuki asked during the final interview. Sarah's answer was simple.
Because they killed my family.
Because someone has to make sure they pay. Because I want to be there when their world burns. Yuki approved her application. The training took 8 months. The volunteers learned to operate alien technology. They drilled on weapons systems and damage control. They practiced working together in the close quarters of a warship. But mostly, they learned to accept what they were about to do. The psychological counselors who worked with the crews reported disturbing patterns. Many volunteers showed signs of post-traumatic stress. Many had survivor's guilt. Many had lost their ability to feel anything except rage. The counselors recommended that several volunteers be removed from the program. Admiral Chen overruled them. "We are not sending therapists to negotiate peace. We are sending weapons to end a threat. These people are perfect for what we need." Not everyone agreed with the mission. Protests erupted in several cities. People held signs saying "No revenge" and "Peace, not genocide." Religious leaders called for forgiveness. Philosophers wrote essays about the moral implications of what Earth was planning. The protests were small. Most of humanity remembered the broadcasts. They remembered watching 20 million people die. They remembered the Zathran admiral promising more death if Earth resisted. They remembered being told they were livestock. The few voices calling for mercy were drowned out by the many demanding justice. As the fleet neared completion, another project reached fruition. Marcus Webb's team had improved the quantum disruptors far beyond their original design. The new version could not only collapse shields, it could disrupt the nuclear forces holding atoms together. When activated at sufficient power, it would cause a star to become unstable. They called it the Quantum Cascade Bomb. They built 3 of them. Each one was small enough to fit in a standard missile casing, but powerful enough to kill a solar system. Sarah Mitchell asked Marcus to explain how it worked. He drew diagrams and used technical language, but the summary was simple. The bomb would make the Zathran star collapse partially, then rebound in a destructive oscillation. The star would not go supernova, but its output would drop by 90%. The planets would freeze. Everything would die. How long would it take? Sarah asked. For the star to destabilize? 3 minutes. For the planets to become uninhabitable? 6 weeks. For everything to die? 6 months, maybe a year for the last survivors in deep bunkers. Sarah nodded slowly. And you are comfortable with this? Creating a weapon that kills billions of people slowly. Marcus looked at her with dead eyes. My niece died in Jakarta. She was 7 years old. She loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist. The Zathran turned her into ash for a broadcast. Am I comfortable killing them? Yes, General. I am very comfortable with it. The day of departure arrived 14 months after the initial attack. 50 warships hung in orbit above Earth, ready for the 8-month journey to the Zathran homeworld. 5,000 crew members said goodbye to families they might never see again. The mission had one outcome: complete victory or total death. There was no middle ground. Admiral Chen addressed the fleet from the flagship Mumbai's Wrath. His speech was broadcast across Earth so everyone could hear it. "We do not go as conquerors," he said. "We do not go seeking territory or resources. We go as avengers. 14 months ago, the Zathran killed 20 million of us to prove their power. Today we take their lesson and return it to them amplified. We will show them that humanity is not livestock. We are not weak. We are not forgiving. We remember every death. We honor every victim. And we will ensure that no species ever makes the mistake of threatening Earth again." The fleet departed. 50 ships activated their fold space drives and vanished from Earth's sky, beginning a journey that would take them across 12 light-years of space. The journey was long and difficult. Fold space travel was not smooth. The ships shuddered and groaned as they punched through reality, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Many crew members experienced temporal disorientation and nausea. Some had psychological breaks and had to be sedated for the duration. Sarah Chen spent her time maintaining weapons systems and staring at the memorial wall in the weapons bay. 500,000 names from Shanghai covered every available surface. She found her family's names and traced them with her finger every day. It became a ritual, a prayer to the dead that she would not fail them. 6 months into the journey, Commander Tanaka called a meeting of the senior officers. She had been reviewing the intelligence data taken from Zathran ships, and she had found something troubling. "They have families," she said, displaying images on the screen. "Children. The Zathran have children." The room fell silent. Everyone had seen the data, but no one had wanted to acknowledge it. The Zathran were not monsters. They were people. They had culture and art and families. They had children who played and learned and grew up in cities not unlike human cities. "Does it matter?" Admiral Chen asked quietly. "I think it should matter," Tanaka said. "We are about to kill billions of people who had nothing to do with the attack on Earth. Most of them probably did not even know about it. Are we prepared to do that?" The debate that followed was heated. Some argued that the Zathran civilians were innocent and should be spared. Others argued that the Zathran Empire was built on the deaths of other species, and every citizen benefited from that system. Some suggested they should offer terms of surrender. Others insisted that mercy would be seen as weakness. In the end, Admiral Chen made the decision. "We continue as planned. The Zathran made themselves the example. We will complete the lesson they started. If that makes us monsters, then we are monsters. But we are monsters that protect our species." The vote was 7 in favor, 3 opposed. The mission would continue. The fleet arrived at the edge of the Zathran system 8 months after leaving Earth. The fold space transition ended, and 50 human warships emerged back into normal space. Sensors immediately began scanning the system ahead. 4 planets, dozens of orbital stations, hundreds of ships moving between them. This was the heart of the Zathran Empire, the home of the species that had murdered 20 million humans as a demonstration. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display. The Zathran defensive fleet was massive. Over 800 ships, many of them larger and more advanced than the vessels that had attacked Earth. But they were not prepared. Why would they be? As far as they knew, Earth had surrendered. They had no reason to expect retaliation. "Send the message," Chen ordered. A single transmission was broadcast across all frequencies in the Zathran language. The message was simple and direct. "We are humanity. We are coming. We will show you what happens when you kill our families." The transmission took 20 minutes to reach the inner system. 20 minutes later, alarms began sounding on every Zathran ship and station. Their sensors were detecting the human fleet. Impossible. Earth was 12 light-years away. Earth had no interstellar capability. Earth had surrendered. But the impossible was happening. 50 unknown warships were accelerating toward the inner system at speeds that should not be possible, and they were broadcasting a message that made it clear this was not a diplomatic visit. The Zathran military mobilized immediately. The defensive fleet moved to intercept. Ground-based weapons were activated. Civilian populations were told to seek shelter. The leadership tried to open communications to understand what was happening, to negotiate. Admiral Chen did not answer their hails. The human fleet continued its approach in complete silence, weapons armed and shields at maximum. They had traveled across interstellar space for this moment. They had trained and prepared and accepted what they were about to do. As the human fleet crossed into the inner system, Sarah Chen sat at her weapons console and whispered a prayer to her dead family. "This is for you, all of it. Everything we are about to do. We do it for you." The fleet passed the orbit of the fourth planet. The Zathran defensive fleet moved to engage. The range closed to weapons distance. Admiral Chen gave the order that would begin the second battle of the war. All ships opened fire. The Zathran defensive fleet outnumbered the human attackers 16-1. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, their shields designed to withstand any conventional attack. They had defended this system for 300 years against pirates and raiders. They had never lost a battle. That perfect record lasted exactly 6 hours. The human ships did not fight the way the Zathran expected. They did not form battle lines or attempt to outmaneuver their opponents. Instead, they used the tactics they had perfected against the invasion fleet at Earth. Overwhelming coordination, AI-assisted targeting, and complete disregard for traditional engagement protocols. The battle began with the human ships launching every missile they had. 6,000 missiles filled the space between the fleets, each one guided by AI systems that had been learning Zathran evasion patterns for 14 months. The Zathran point defense systems destroyed most of them, but most was not enough. 400 missiles reached their targets. The explosions bloomed across the Zathran formation like deadly flowers. Ships that had stood for centuries were torn apart in seconds. The defensive fleet tried to return fire, but the human ships were already moving, their engines pushing them to accelerations that should have killed their crews. Only the Zathran inertial dampers, reverse-engineered and improved, kept the human crews alive at 8 gravities of acceleration. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Zathran were fighting with doctrine and tradition. Humanity had survived, but in surviving they had changed forever. The children born after the Zathran extinction grew up in a different world. They learned about the massacre in their history classes. They saw the recordings of the 20 cities burning. They visited the memorials and read the names. But they also learned about what came after. They learned that their species had responded to genocide with extinction. The debates never ended. Every generation argued about whether it had been justified. Philosophers wrote thousands of books analyzing the decision. Ethicists created entire schools of thought around the question of proportional response versus absolute deterrence. Religious leaders preached about forgiveness and redemption, about the stain on humanity's collective soul. But everyone agreed on one thing: it had worked. 200 years after the Zathran extinction, Earth was one of the most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. Not because they had the most advanced technology or the largest military, but because everyone remembered what they were capable of, what they were willing to do. The human diplomatic corps was the most effective in the galaxy. When human ambassadors spoke, other species listened. When humanity suggested peace negotiations, warring species agreed. When Earth said a conflict had gone too far, both sides backed down. Not because they loved humanity, but because they feared becoming another example. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Zathran had wanted to make Earth an example to teach the galaxy about submission. Instead, Earth had made the Zathran an example that taught the galaxy about consequences. The teacher had become the lesson, but there were costs beyond the obvious. Human society carried deep scars. The generation that had lived through the massacre and the revenge campaign never fully recovered. Rates of depression and anxiety remained elevated for decades. Many survivors struggled with the question of whether their survival had been worth the price paid. The Remembrance Day was established as a global holiday. Every year on the anniversary of the first attack, the entire planet fell silent for 20 minutes. 1 minute for every million people who had died in the initial massacre. Then another 7 hours of silence for the Zathran dead, though few people observed the full duration. It was too long. The weight of 7 billion deaths was too heavy to bear for that long. Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen in her own right, gave a speech on the 100th anniversary of the extinction. She was 74 years old, gray-haired and weary, but her eyes still held the same emptiness they had gained a century before. "We did what we thought was necessary," she said to the gathered crowd in Shanghai, the city rebuilt on the ashes of the old. "We eliminated a threat. We ensured our survival. We made certain that no species would ever attack Earth again. And we succeeded. For 100 years we have been safe. For 100 years no one has dared to harm us." She paused, looking at the memorial wall where her family's names were engraved. "But I think about the Zathran children every day. I think about the ones who had no part in the decision to attack us. I think about the artists and teachers and farmers who just wanted to live their lives. I think about how many innocent people died because their government made a terrible choice. The crowd was silent, hanging on her words. And then I think about my mother and father and brother, who died because the Zathran government made that same choice, and I realized that there was no good answer. There was only survival and extinction. We chose survival. They got extinction. I cannot say if it was right. I can only say it was what we did. She stepped away from the podium and the crowd did not applaud. They simply stood in silence, each person wrestling with their own thoughts about what humanity had become. The alien species that had witnessed everything developed their own myths about Earth. In some cultures, humans were demons who destroyed entire worlds without mercy. In others, they were righteous avengers who punished evil. In most, they were simply the species you did not provoke. A popular saying emerged in the galactic common language: "Do not wake the humans." It was used as a warning about the dangers of escalation, about how violence could spiral beyond anyone's control. It was about how fear could make monsters of anyone. But there were also stories of human compassion. When the Kelrath species faced extinction from a plague, it was human scientists who worked around the clock to develop a cure. When the Thorn homeworld was struck by an asteroid, it was human ships that arrived first with supplies and aid. When the Vrenix Confederation faced economic collapse, it was human economists who helped rebuild their system. Earth had learned that fear alone was not enough to build a lasting peace. They needed to be more than the species that had destroyed the Zathran. They needed to be the species that helped others, that contributed to the galactic community, that proved they were more than weapons and vengeance. It became a conscious effort. Every human who went into space was trained not just in technology and protocol, but in empathy and cultural sensitivity. They were taught to see aliens as people, not as potential threats. They were reminded that the Zathran extinction was a warning about what humanity could become if they were not careful. 300 years after the extinction, the last living crew member of the original Revenge fleet died. Her name was Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez, daughter of Commander James Rodriguez, who had died pursuing fleeing Zathran ships. She had been 18 when she joined the mission, one of the youngest volunteers. She lived to be 318, extended by medical technology that had been developed from Zathran biological research. In her final interview before her death, she was asked if she regretted her part in the extinction. "Every day," she said softly, "and never. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that so many had to die. I regret that humanity had to become killers on such a scale. But I do not regret that we survived. I do not regret that Earth still exists. I do not regret that my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren grew up free instead of enslaved." She died surrounded by her family, 200 descendants across 8 generations. Each of them alive because humanity had chosen survival over mercy 3 centuries before. The Zathran extinction remained the defining moment of human history. It was the moment when humanity stopped being a single-planet species worried about its own survival, and became a galactic power that shaped the politics of hundreds of worlds. It was the moment when humanity proved it would do anything, sacrifice anything, become anything to protect its own. But it was also a warning that humanity told itself. In every military academy, in every diplomatic training program, in every school across human space, the lesson was the same. This is what we did. This is what we are capable of. This is how far we can fall when we are pushed. Never forget the cost. Never forget what was lost. Never forget that security came at the price of 7 billion lives. And most importantly, never let it be necessary again. The galaxy moved on, but it never forgot. The frozen Zathran homeworld remained as it was, a tomb orbiting a dying star. No one colonized it. No one salvaged it. It was left as a memorial, a reminder to every species of what happened when you made humanity your enemy. Occasionally, ships would pass by the system on their journeys between stars. They would look at the dark world and the dim star and remember the recordings they had seen. They would think about the 20 million humans who had died. They would think about the 7 billion Zathran who had died in return, and they would continue on their way, making very certain that they never gave humanity a reason to create another memorial. In the end, the Zathran had achieved their goal. They had created a demonstration that the galaxy would never forget. They had taught a lesson about power and consequences that would echo across the stars for thousands of years. They had just been wrong about who was teaching and who was learning. The galaxy had learned its lesson well. And the lesson was simple, brutal, and absolutely clear. Leave Earth alone. Was fighting with rage and innovation. There was no contest. Target their command ship, he ordered. I want their leadership to understand what is happening before they die. The Mumbai's wrath broke from the formation and accelerated toward the largest Zathran vessel, a dreadnought that served as the system's command center. The distance closed rapidly. The Zathran ship fired everything it had, but the human shields, upgraded Zathran technology combined with quantum reinforcement, held against the barrage. Sarah Chen armed the main weapon, a directed energy cannon that drew power directly from the ship's fusion reactor. The capacitors charged. The targeting system locked on. She thought of her family one more time, then fired. The beam cut through space and struck the dreadnought's shield. For 3 seconds the shield held. Then it collapsed. The beam continued through the ship's hull, vaporizing everything in its path. The dreadnought split in half and began tumbling through space, atmosphere venting from the massive wounds. Direct hit, Sarah reported. Her voice was steady, empty of emotion. Command ship is destroyed. The Zathran fleet lost all coordination. Individual captains tried to retreat or rally their forces, but without central command they were just targets. The human ships systematically destroyed them, moving through the defensive fleet like predators through a herd. The AI targeting systems never missed. The weapons never stopped firing. The shields never failed. 6 hours after the battle began, the Zathran defensive fleet was gone. 800 ships reduced to debris, thousands of Zathran killed, and the human fleet had lost only 2 ships, both to lucky hits that had overwhelmed their shields. But the battle was not over. The orbital stations around the inner planets opened fire. Ground-based weapons launched missiles and energy attacks. The Zathran were defending their home with everything they had. It was not enough. Commander Tanaka coordinated the assault on the orbital infrastructure. The human ships split into groups, each one assigned to a specific station. The stations had powerful shields and weapons, but they could not maneuver. They were fixed targets. The human ships danced around them, hitting them from multiple angles, overwhelming their defenses through coordinated strikes. One by one, the stations fell. Their shields collapsed. Their hulls breached. Their crews died in the vacuum of space or in the fires that consumed their vessels. Within 12 hours, the Zathran orbital defenses were eliminated. The human fleet now had complete control of the space around the Zathran homeworld. The planet below was defenseless, its 7 billion inhabitants trapped and waiting for what would come next. Admiral Chen broadcast another message to the surface. This time, he expected a response. People of the Zathran Empire, you are witnessing the consequences of your actions. 14 months ago, your military killed 20 million humans as a demonstration. You wanted to teach the galaxy about power. Today, we are your teachers. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Every member of your military will disarm. Every government official will resign. You will provide complete access to all your facilities and records. If you comply, we will consider terms. If you resist, we will show you what humanity learned from your lesson. The response came within an hour. The Zathran leadership, what remained of it, broadcast a message of their own. The speaker was an elderly Zathran with gray skin and desperate eyes. Please, he said in heavily accented English, we surrender, completely, unconditionally. We will give you anything you want. Technology, resources, reparations, just please do not harm our people. Most of them knew nothing about the attack on your world. They are innocent. Admiral Chen listened to the plea. He thought about the 20 million people who had died watching the skies light up with alien fire. He thought about the families destroyed. He thought about Commander Rodriguez and his crew who had died pursuing fleeing ships. He thought about everything humanity had lost. Then he thought about the intelligence reports. The Zathran had attacked 47 other species before Earth. They had killed billions. They had built their empire on demonstrations and terror. Every citizen of that empire had benefited from those atrocities, had lived comfortable lives funded by conquest and genocide. The debate in the command center was fierce. Some officers argued that the Zathran had surrendered and should be treated accordingly. Others insisted that surrender was not enough, that the only way to ensure this never happened again was to remove the threat completely. Commander Tanaka was the most vocal advocate for mercy. "If we do this," she said, "if we destroy their world after they surrender, we become exactly what we hate. We become the species that commits genocide. Is that really who we want to be?" Admiral Chen was quiet for a long time. He looked at the planet on the main display, blue and green and beautiful, home to billions of people. Then he looked at the memorial display showing 20 million human names. "The Zathran made a choice when they attacked Earth," he said finally. "They chose to be teachers. They chose to show the galaxy what happens to species who resist. We are completing their lesson. We are showing the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. This is not about revenge. This is about deterrence. Every species watching needs to understand that Earth is not to be touched. Ever." The vote was taken. 7 commanders in favor of deploying the quantum cascade bombs. 2 opposed. 1 abstention. Marcus Webb was given the order to prepare the weapons. He sat in the weapons bay of the Mumbai's Wrath, staring at the 3 small missiles that contained the power to kill a solar system. His hands shook as he ran the final checks. He thought about his niece, about her laugh and her dreams and the way she used to explain dinosaur facts with such enthusiasm. He thought about the fact that somewhere on the planet below, there were probably Zathran children who loved dinosaurs too, who had dreams and families and futures. Then he thought about the fact that those children's civilization had killed 47 species, that it had made genocide into policy, that it had broadcast the deaths of millions as entertainment. He armed the missiles. The broadcast went out across all frequencies, transmitted to the Zathran homeworld and to the 200 civilizations that had watched Earth's massacre 14 months ago. "We are humanity," Admiral Chen said. 14 months ago, the Zathran killed 20 million of our people as a demonstration. They wanted to teach the galaxy about power. They wanted to show what resistance costs. They chose to be teachers, and we are their students. Today we teach our own lesson." He paused, letting the words sink in across the galaxy. "We offered peace. We were answered with slaughter. We offered no violence. We were shown nothing but cruelty. The Zathran made themselves our enemies. They chose this path. Everything that follows is the consequence of their choice." Another pause. On the planet below, billions of Zathran watched their screens in growing horror, understanding what was about to happen. To every species listening, approach humanity with peace, and we will be your allies. We will trade with you. We will learn from you. We will build together. But approach us with violence, threaten our worlds, harm our people, and this is what awaits you. Admiral Chen nodded to Marcus Webb. "Launch the weapons." The 3 quantum cascade bombs were loaded into missiles and fired toward the Zathran star. They would take 18 minutes to reach their target. 18 minutes for the galaxy to watch. 18 minutes for the Zathran to understand fully what they had brought upon themselves. On the planet below, panic spread. People tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The ships that could leave the atmosphere were destroyed. The bunkers that could protect them would only delay the inevitable. 7 billion people could do nothing but watch and wait. Commander Tanaka locked herself in her quarters. She could not watch this. She had voted against it. She had argued that mercy was what separated humans from monsters, but she had been overruled, and now she would have to live with what her species was doing. Sarah Chen sat at her weapons console and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no horror, just emptiness. Her family was still dead. This would not bring them back. But maybe, she thought, maybe this would ensure that no other family would suffer what hers had. The missiles reached the star. The quantum cascade bombs activated simultaneously. The effect was not immediate or dramatic. The star did not explode. It simply began to destabilize, its nuclear fusion processes disrupted by quantum interference. The output dropped by 10%, then 20, then 50. Within 3 minutes, the star's light had decreased by 90%. The planets that had basked in its warmth for billions of years began to cool. The temperature dropped rapidly. On the Zathran homeworld, the sky darkened as if a shadow had fallen across the sun. The human fleet remained in orbit, documenting everything. They watched as the temperature plummeted. They watched as snow began to fall across the entire planet, even at the equator. They watched as the Zathran frantically tried to adapt, to survive, to save themselves. There was no saving themselves. The planet was dying and everyone on it was dying too. Admiral Chen broadcast one final message to the Zathran homeworld. You taught us that demonstrations have power. You taught us that overwhelming force creates respect. You taught us that mercy is weakness. We learned well. Every death on your world is a consequence of your lessons. Remember that as your world freezes. Remember that as your children die. Remember that you brought this on yourselves. The human fleet remained in orbit for 72 hours, documenting the collapse of Zathran civilization. The recordings would be broadcast throughout the galaxy, a permanent record of what had happened and why. On the second day, the planetary temperature had dropped below freezing across 90% of the surface. Billions died from cold and starvation as agricultural systems collapsed and heating infrastructure failed. On the third day, the electromagnetic transmissions from the surface began to fade. Cities went dark as power grids failed. The last messages were pleas and curses in equal measure. Broadcasts that would travel across space for years. Messages from the dying to anyone who would listen. On the fourth day, there were no more transmissions. The Zathran homeworld had gone silent. Marcus Webb ran calculations and determined that complete extinction would take 6 weeks. The last survivors would be those in deep bunkers with fusion reactors and supplies. They would live a bit longer, but they would still die. There was no escape. There was no rescue. There was only the slow, cold death that humanity had sentenced them to. The fleet departed the system, leaving behind automated probes to document the final days. They had accomplished their mission. The Zathran Empire was destroyed. The threat was eliminated. The demonstration was complete. The journey back to Earth took another 8 months. The mood on the ships was strange and difficult to define. There was no celebration. There was no pride. The crews had done what they set out to do, but the cost of that victory was the death of an entire civilization. 7 billion people, gone, because humanity had decided it was necessary. Some crews held memorial services for the Zathran. Others drank themselves into oblivion, trying to forget what they had witnessed. Many simply sat in silence, staring at walls, processing what they had become. Commander Tanaka spent the return journey writing a report that would never be published. In it, she detailed every decision, every debate, every moment that had led to genocide. She wrote it as a warning to future generations. This is what we did. This is who we became. This is the price of absolute security. Sarah Chen returned to her weapons console every day and stared at her family's names on the memorial wall. She had avenged them. The Zathran were extinct. Humanity was safe. So why did she feel so empty? The fleet arrived back at Earth to no fanfare. The ships docked at orbital facilities and the crews disembarked in silence. They were heroes, technically. They had eliminated an existential threat. They had ensured Earth's safety for generations. But they did not feel like heroes. Admiral Chen gave one final address to humanity, broadcast from Geneva. We set out to avenge 20 million deaths, he said. We succeeded. The Zathran Empire no longer exists. Their homeworld is frozen and dead. Their species is extinct. We did this. We chose this. And we must live with this choice. He paused, looking older than his years. Let the galaxy understand we did not seek this war. We offered peace. We were peaceful. But when forced to choose between submission and survival, we chose survival. When forced to choose between mercy and security, we chose security. We will not apologize for these choices, but we will remember them. The memorials were built over the next year. On Earth, a monument was erected listing all 20 million names of the dead from the first attack. It stretched across 5 city blocks, a wall of names that took hours to walk past. Beside it, a second monument was built. This one listed 7 billion names. The Zathran dead, every citizen of their homeworld, documented and remembered. The inscription read, "We remember all the dead, theirs and ours. We remember why this happened. May we never forget the cost of violence." The recordings of the Zathran extinction were broadcast throughout the galaxy. Every species that had watched Earth's massacre now watched the Zathran homeworld freeze and die. The message was clear and unmistakable. Humanity was not to be threatened. The response was immediate. Dozens of alien species sent diplomatic missions to Earth. They came with offers of trade, alliance, and friendship. They came with promises of peace. They came because they understood that humanity had the will and the capability to destroy any threat completely and utterly. Earth had wanted to be part of the galactic community peacefully. Instead, they had become its most feared species. Not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they had proven they were willing to go further than anyone else. They had proven that threatening humanity was not just dangerous, it was suicidal. Commander Tanaka retired from military service. She spent her remaining years teaching at universities, lecturing about the ethical implications of the Zathran campaign. Her message was always the same. We won, but we lost something in the winning. We became safe, but we became monsters to achieve that safety. The question is whether it was worth it. She never provided an answer to that question. She did not think there was one. Sarah Chen stayed in the military. She rose through the ranks and eventually commanded her own ship. She never fired her weapons again. She did not need to. The Zathran extinction had created such a powerful deterrent that no species dared threaten Earth. She spent 30 years patrolling a galaxy that had learned to fear humanity. Marcus Webb continued his research but never built another weapon. He focused on peaceful applications of the technology he had helped create. He donated all his wealth to funds supporting the families of those who had died in the initial attack. It was never enough. Nothing could ever be enough. Admiral Chen died 10 years after the campaign ended. His last words were reported by his attending nurse. Did we do the right thing? No one could answer him. The galaxy entered a new era. Wars between species became rarer. Genocidal campaigns stopped completely. No one wanted to become another cautionary tale. No one wanted to be the next Zathran. Humanity spread across the stars, building colonies and establishing trade routes. They were welcomed everywhere they went, not with love but with respect and fear. Every species knew the story. Every species understood the lesson. 100 years after the Zathran extinction, a human exploration ship encountered a memorial built by an alien species. It was a monument to the Zathran homeworld, a reminder of what had been lost. The inscription was in the alien language, but it translated simply, "They made Earth angry. Nothing remained." The galaxy had learned humanity's rule: approach with peace and be welcomed. Approach with violence and be erased from existence. It was not the future humanity had hoped for. It was not the dream of peaceful first contact and cooperation between species, but it was survival. It was security. It was ensuring that no human city would ever burn again. Because aliens decided to make an example. In the end, Earth had become what it needed to be. A species so terrifyingly committed to the survival of its own that no one dared threaten them. They had proven that humanity would go to any length, pay any price, and bear any burden to protect their own. They had proven that threatening Earth's children was not a demonstration of power. It was a death sentence for an entire species. The galaxy watched. The galaxy remembered. The galaxy learned. And Earth stood among the stars as the species that loved peace but perfected vengeance. The species that had lost 20 million and taken 7 billion in return. The species that had stared into the abyss jumped in willingly and emerged as something the galaxy would never forget: humanity.